Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I would like to ask Trustee Dwyer to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Joe Dwyer, Trustee Ward 3. We acknowledge that we're on traditional territories of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Alberta, and express gratitude and respect for the land we use, pledge to end systemic racism, commit to advancing reconciliation, and partnering with Indigenous people in our work with school councils and board. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda other than what I have? I would like to add in report 9.2.2 the Bon Accord Road meeting. Does anybody have anything else they? Oh, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Trish, all in favor? I would say unanimous, but I can't see Janine. Janine, do you have your can you put your camera on? Oh, there. There you are. Okay. Unanimous. Can I get an approval for the minutes from last meeting? Or are there any errors or omissions that need to? Tasha motions the approval of the minutes. All in favor? Unanimous. Any business arising from the minutes? No, seeing none. We have Benji online with us, who is going to go through our audited financial statements for 2022-2023. Oh, yes. Sorry, I will also hand the mic over to Mrs. Kike.
Good morning and thank you. Joining today's public board online are Benji Wasser, auditor for NMP, Heather May, public member to the audit committee, and Niles Jensen, also a public member. On Wednesday, November 15th, the audit committee and the committee of the whole received the draft 2022-23 audited financial statement for the year ending August 31st, 2023. Mr. Wasser was in attendance to present the draft report and respond to questions. At the committee of the whole, trustees and the public audit members were provided the opportunity to ask questions, and administration responded accordingly. Mr. Wasser provided an unqualified report, meaning that the audit found no irregularities and the statements were presented fairly. The division had achieved all legislated and regulatory requirements. At this time, administration is recommending that the Board of Trustees approve the 2022-23 audited financial statements for the year ending August 31st, 2023, as presented. Thank you, Chair.
I'll hand it over to Benji now.
Okay, perfect. So as Ruth mentioned, I did talk about the financial statements and our audit findings with the audit committee a little while ago, and we did go through this in quite a bit more depth, going into kind of the details of the financial statements. My plan today is to do a very high-level overview. By all means, I can answer some questions along the way, but the plan is just to kind of give you that overall sense of what the financials look like and kind of restate what our audit opinion was. So with that, I can't see if anything is projected on screen or anything, but I'm going to start with the financial statements themselves and just start on the audit report, which is just past the table of contents. So essentially the audit report is what I like to say is MNP's document that we put onto your financial statements. So they're your financial statements, they're not ours, obviously. So we put this audit report in to kind of state what we think how the audit went essentially, and if we found any issues. The important part is the opinion paragraph, which is the first section there on that page. And basically just states that we've audited the financial statements of the school division at August 31st, 2023. So that's the year that we audited most recently. And then the important paragraph is the second one, just basically stating that, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the division as at August 31st, 2023. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying a clean audit opinion. There's no qualifications or modifications of any kind. And as Ruth mentioned, that's the one you want. That's the gold standard. It's the best audit report you can get with no issues. Okay, with that, I will jump into page, I believe it's page 4, the statement of financial position. All right, so this is where we get into the actual numbers. I'll just touch on some of the high points in here. This is the statement of financial position, which is a snapshot at your year end. You can see there's 2 columns there on the right. 2023, which I'll refer to as the current year, is what we just audited. And then 2022 on the far right is what we audited last year. So the first thing I'll point out is that it does say restated underneath the 2022 header. And the reason for that is because of the asset retirement obligations handbook section that was adopted this year. This is not an error in any way that happened at the school division that we had to change prior numbers or anything like that. It was essentially just a legislative requirement to adopt what we call the asset retirement obligations, which I will talk about in a few minutes here. But essentially, to comply with the provincial regulations, you not only have to apply the asset retirement obligations in 2023, the current year, but you also have to estimate what it would have been last year and basically plunk that number in the prior year as well. So if you were looking at a set of financial statements from last year's audit, you would see that column, the 2022 column, is slightly different. There's a few numbers that have been updated basically to incorporate the asset retirement obligations. So with that, I'll start with the numbers here. Financial assets is the first thing at the top. It starts with cash. So you've got $15.9 million kind of in the bank. That's down about $7 million from the prior year, from 23. Main reason for that is there were quite a number of capital asset additions in the year, which I'll touch on. And there was actually an overall deficit of $2.5 million just overall. And that was a planned deficit because you did have fairly high reserves that you had budgeted to reduce. So the only way to reduce reserves is to run a deficit. So this is not an unexpected thing or a bad thing. It was planned, which you'll see on the next page. So if you've got a deficit, that means you're burning through the excess cash that you have. So that was planned. Next item here is just a small one, accounts receivable, what's owed to the school division at the end of the year. It's not much different. It's about $100,000 higher than the prior year. And again, this is just timing. So some organizations would owe the school division money. So depending on when those checks come in, if it comes in August or September, it would change slightly from year to year. So no issues there, just a little bit of a timing difference. On the liability side, we start with accounts payable. So you can see this is up quite a bit, about $350,000 from the prior year to $3.1 million. This is again similar to what I mentioned before. You did have some higher summer spending, so some more invoices coming throughout the summer to try to help with that reserve cap issue. So trying to bring your reserves down, doing some last minute spending in the summer. So some of those payments, you would have incurred the expenses in the summer, but not officially paid for them until after year end, so in September. So that will increase your accounts payable at the end of the year. Next item is unspent deferred contributions. This is essentially your carryover funds. So that's down about 800,000 from the prior year to 3.3 million. And again, what this is essentially funding that you've received for something very specific that you just hadn't got around to completing yet. So those funds get carried over into the next fiscal year. The next item I was wanting to talk about in the liability section is the asset retirement obligation. So that's that big number, 8.2 million, and it's new. You wouldn't have seen that last year, although you do see it in the prior year column at 8.2 as well. And that's what I mentioned before. We did have to restate the prior year to incorporate that asset retirement obligation. And just a quick overview of what that is essentially is the new requirement is that all public sector entities provide an estimate of what it's going to cost at some point in the future to basically clean up any potential contamination in your assets. So in a school division, the main thing that you're going to see is asbestos in buildings, and school divisions have a number of buildings, obviously, with schools. So this 8.2 million is kind of a rough estimate of what it might cost the school division if they were to clean up all the asbestos out of all the schools now, basically. So there's a lot of estimation that goes into that number, but it has been audited, and it does come from sort of engineers' reports and previous history. So it's kind of the best estimate we have at this time. Next section is the non-financial assets. The big number there is your tangible capital assets. And tangible capital assets are essentially the big items that you have. So like I mentioned, it could be schools, could be if you've got vehicles, buses, any kind of equipment, lawnmowers and stuff like that. Anything like that that's big is going to be in your tangible capital assets. You can see it's gone up a little bit, $1.3 million from 95 to 96 million. The big ticket items that were purchased in the year, there was some roofing and lighting projects, some sidewalks, so over $1 million worth of those types of projects. There was a flood reno that was done in the year, about 400,000. And there's actually about $2.1 million in WIP, which is work in progress. So some projects that are underway at the end of the year, which aren't quite complete yet. So some different projects just waiting to be completed. So overall, there's quite a bit of additions there. And then it's always offset by amortization. So that was about 4.5 million. And again, amortization is just the depreciation of assets. So as each year goes by, you expense a little bit of the asset because it loses a little bit of value essentially. Next item on here, it's a pretty small one, is your prepaids. That is up a little bit from last year, from 382 to 912. I think the reason it's up a little bit this year is there was some capital items in prepaid, so some deposits paid and some assets that weren't quite ready for use that are sitting in prepaids. So that's why it's a little bit higher than last year. Next item I wanted to touch on, a couple of lines down, is the spent deferred contributions. This is essentially the liability of supported assets. So whenever the government provides you with funding to build an asset, the offset to that asset goes into this spent deferred capital. So instead of going directly into revenue as a grant or funding, it goes into this spent deferred capital contributions line and gets amortized into income at the same rate as the tangible capital asset. So this is kind of a complicated one, but you can see that it has changed a little bit from last year, and that's due to the depreciation. So as your assets depreciate, this number goes down as well. So that's sitting at 81 million. The last item on this page is your accumulated surplus. So that's sort of what's left over when you have all your assets minus all your liabilities of the school division. You're left with 17.7 million. And I do have a schedule. There's Schedule 1 that I will touch on briefly to kind of break down that number in a little bit more detail. But just remember the number 17.7 million, because I'll talk about that later. Any questions about that page before I move on to the next one? Okay, perfect. So the next page is called the Statement of Operations. It looks fairly similar, but there is one major difference here, and you can see it has a budget column. That's because this is your revenues and expenses, which you budget for. One thing to note is that this is your spring budget. So you would have had a spring budget and a fall budget. Public sector requires that you use your first budget created. So this would be your spring budget. Also to note at the top, it does say restated again under the 2022 header. Again, this is just related to the asset retirement obligations, so no errors or anything like that. Okay, so to jump into the revenue side of things, first of all, you've got your Government of Alberta. You did actually end up about the same as the prior year at 73 million, which is actually quite a bit higher than your budgeted amount of 71.7 million. The next item is your government funding from the federal government. That's up quite a bit, about 350,000 more than you received in the prior year at 917. So the reason for that is essentially kind of back to normal from a grants perspective from the federal government. So last year was a little bit of an anomaly, but we do have more coming in from the federal government this year. So that's really good. The next ones I'm going to kind of lump together. You can see that fees, sales, donations, and other, they're all quite a bit higher than last year and from the budget. The main reason for this, it is kind of standard across all school boards that I work with, is the fact that 2023 fiscal was the first year kind of post-COVID where you didn't have any major interruptions. So in the 2022 fiscal year, you would have only kind of run half the school year normally, essentially. So a lot of the activities for kids that, you know, there's fees involved and sales, there's sports tournaments and stuff like that. All the stuff you generate money from is kind of back to normal now. So it makes sense that you're higher in all those areas. The one item that I didn't touch on yet, though, is right in kind of in the middle, investment income. That's 880,000, and that's significantly higher than the prior year and quite a bit higher than budget as well. And the reason for that is purely just interest rates. As you know, interest rates have skyrocketed, so it does help in some cases when you've got money invested in the bank or in GICs, you get better rates. So definitely got more money coming in from the investment side of things. So then overall, with all those increases, you can see that the total revenue is 78.2 million, which is about 2 million higher than last year and about $3 million higher than your overall spring budget. So all in all, it's pretty good. On the expense side of things, I like to kind of group the two instruction rows together because it's instruction is instruction. But you can see that it's significantly higher when you add those two together than the prior year. So it's actually about $7.7 million more in instruction payments or costs than the prior year. And this was planned. I mean, you were trying to spend down the reserves, so it makes sense that you've got more revenue, so you got to spend more in instruction to kind of use up those funds. Because I think I mentioned it before, but there is a reserve cap that the government has implemented this year, essentially saying that you can't have reserves above a certain amount. So in order to stay under that reserve cap, you want to spend the money that you have. So that's what the school division did this past year. Next item is O&M, operations and maintenance. It's down a little bit, down about $1 million from the prior year. The reason for that, when I kind of look through it, is mainly around supplies. There was just less supplies being purchased in the year. And then transportation system admin and external services, those are actually all fairly close. Like if we look at the budget comparisons, it's almost bang on. So pretty much exactly what the board had projected to happen happened, which is good. So overall expenses was 80 million. In that middle column, 80.7, budgeted for 77.6. So you did spend more than the budget, but you also received more funding than the budget as well. So when it all ends up at the bottom, you ended up with a $2.5 million deficit, which is really close to your projected $2.3 million deficit. So kind of a different way of getting to it. You had more revenue and more expenses, but at the end of the day, you accomplished the goal of spending down the reserves. So all in all, that was really good. Any questions about that one? No. Okay, perfect. So there's a lot more or many more pages here, but I was actually only going to talk about one more, which is what I alluded to the first time. And so it's all the way over on Schedule 1. So a few pages in. The Schedule 1 is called the Schedule of Net Assets. And this, it just represents, oh, now you'll remember that $17.7 million number I told you to remember on the statement of financial position, that overall number, all the assets minus all the liabilities. This is a way of kind of showing what that's made up of. So you can see the 17.7 and the bottom left-hand corner, that's the total. And then the numbers to the right of that are how it's made up. So the first one, if you kind of start from left to right, is the investment in tangible capital assets right in the middle. The number at the bottom of the page is 6.7 million. That is essentially your equity in the board funded assets. So how you calculate that is you just take all your assets, all the tangible capital assets that you have, you minus the spent deferred capital, that's that liability against it, and then you also minus the asset retirement obligation. So what's left is your equity in your assets at 66.7 million. Then the three far right ones, if you go all the way to the end, we've got the internally restricted. Those are essentially your reserves. So you've got both capital and operating reserves. If you start at the very far right, that's your capital reserve at $3.4 million. That one is basically set aside for future capital projects. So there's board motions to set those aside at some point. Then the next number over a little bit to the left is your operating reserves, which are similar to capital reserves. They're set aside by board motion, but they're for future operating activities. So not capital in nature, but operations. And then the number that's left over then, unrestricted surplus, it's kind of the leftover, what unearmarked extra funds basically. So this one is just kind of what's left over. The one thing to note is when I mentioned that reserve cap, when the government looks at the reserve cap, they actually add the unrestricted surplus and the operating reserves together. So they look at, is that number too high according to their regulations? And so in your case, you did have an exemption for the reserve cap. So you are basically you're not over the reserve cap in a material way at all. So no issues noted around the reserve cap from an audit perspective. That being said, I think there's some changes to reserve caps and things coming. Just saw a document yesterday, actually. I don't know if it affects reserve caps, but it affects getting approvals for reserves and things like that. So I guess stay tuned for new rules coming for next year on reserves. That's essentially it for the audited financial statements themselves. I did just want to touch on the findings. You don't have that document in front of you, but it's just a document that I would have gone through in great detail with the audit committee. Basically, it just says it documents all the things that we would have found during our audit. So is there fraud? Are there any other issues that I need to bring to your attention? And so we went through all that in detail, but just to give the board an idea, it was essentially fairly clean. There was nothing significant that we needed to bring to your attention, which we haven't already talked to the audit committee about. So all in all, it went really well.
Does anybody have any questions on the audited financials? Just making my way to the top. So seeing that there aren't any questions of, oh, Trish?
I have a question, but I think it's more an internal question as opposed to something that involves our auditor. Just how some numbers were arrived at. Just clarification.
Okay. And we might have to, just so you know, we might have to take the questions back because we don't have a secretary treasurer quite yet. Okay. Any other questions? Any questions, Joe? Trish? I mean, Tash, I looked at Tash and said Trish. Stacy?
Okay, now that you ask, Stacy Beaver, Ward 5. Just curious, now I have lost where it was. In our revenues. Oh, sorry. And I believe this was reviewed at the committee of the whole meeting, but now it's evading me. For other revenue, we had budgeted 31,000. Last year's actual was 375,000 and we came out with 434,000. I'm just curious exactly what other revenue entails and why we budgeted so low when last year was quite a bit higher. Thanks, if possible.
I will have to ask Shauna to bring that answer back because I don't have a secretary treasurer to ask yet.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Cindy?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the 2022-2023 audited financials? Stacy?
I move to approve the 2023 audited financials as presented at the November 29th, 2023 public board meeting. Thank you.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. That the Board of Trustees approve the 2022-2023 audited financial statements for the year ending August 31st, 2023, as presented at the November 29th, 2023 public board meeting. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Thank you, Benji.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just one last comment. We're just putting together, now that everything's approved, we'll put together sort of a signature package that I will email out to the group. There'll be a couple spots to sign in various spots. And then when we get the signatures back, we put it all together, provide it back to you to be submitted to the government by tomorrow, which is the deadline. So.
Thank you.
Okay. I guess that's it for me then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, 7.2, updated 2020-2023 reserve mitigation strategy exemption. Shauna.
Thank you. As provided for the board, if you remember, as Benji alluded to, the board, you do have operating reserves. There was a multi-year strategy that was submitted to the government back for the beginning of 22-23. And at that time, the government did inform us that every year we would have to provide an update on that, which we did provide along with the 23-24 budget. So provided for the board's as a reminder, is the original letter that was sent back by Minister LaGrange at the time that approved our reserve mitigation strategy, our multi-year strategy. So that was that original letter that came back in November of 2022. And so in response to that, and as we just spoke to on an $80 million budget, I think we did very well to come that close, 209,000 to where we wanted to land to get into a deficit budget. And so this letter that is here is an updated letter to Minister Nicolaides, asking for a further exemption of 209,522 when compared to our original reserve mitigation strategy that was submitted originally. And this does need approval because this will be submitted along with our audited financial statements.
Can I get a motion? Cindy?
I move that the Board of Trustees approve the updated 2022-2023 Reserve Mitigation Strategy Exemption Letter as presented at the November 29th, 2023 Public Board Meeting.
Any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. That the Board of Trustees approve the updated 2022-2023 Reserve Mitigation Strategy Exemption Letter as presented at the November 29th, 2023 Public Board Meeting. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, 7.3, capital reserves modular classroom relocation.
I'll pass it over to Ms. Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. On September 18th, 2023, the superintendent received communication from Alberta Infrastructure for the modular classroom program at Redwater School and Landing Trail. The letter acknowledged that the relocation costs for Landing Trail modulars would be $115,765.51. At this time, administration requests $115,765.51 be used from capital reserves as planned.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please? Trish.
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. I move that the Board of Trustees approve the use of capital reserves in the amount of $115,765.51 for the relocation of 2 modular classrooms at Landing Trail School as presented at the November 29th, 2023 Public Board meeting.
Any questions? Stacy.
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. Just to confirm, I know that we have looked at these projects for the last year and planning in that for the ask of the government for the capital funding. I believe this amount was estimated in our budget. Is that correct? Or is this an additional amount that's taken from capital reserves that was unexpected? If admin is able to clarify.
Sorry, I didn't turn this. I apologize, trustee Pequin. I will have to go back to compare with the original submission for the moving back up to know for both sets of modules, because I can't remember what we, on the spot, I can't remember what we submitted. But I can get that information.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It does say in the memo that the letter did acknowledge the use of internal boards resources. So I'm assuming that we did have an estimate at least near to this amount. So just to clarify if possible. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to call the question that the Board of Trustees approve the use of capital reserves in the amount of $115,765.51 for the relocation of 2 modular classrooms at Landing Trail School as presented at the November 29th, 2023 Public Board meeting. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, 7.4. Appointment of Secretary Treasurer, Shauna.
And this does require board motion as per the Education Act. So the motion is that the Board of Trustees, as per the Education Act, appoint Sean Nicholson as our Associate Superintendent Corporate Services as Secretary Treasurer for the division. It will be effective this Friday, December 1st. And so it just outlines legislative responsibilities, and this does have to go to the minister. And so that will be submitted to the minister on the 1st.
Can I get a motion? Tasha?
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. I move that the Board of Trustees, as per the provisions of the Education Act, appoint Sean Nicholson, Associate Superintendent Corporate Services, as Secretary Treasurer for the Sturgeon Public School Division, effective December 1st, 2023.
Any questions? I'm going to call the question that the Board of Trustees, as per the provisions of the Education Act, appoint Sean Nicholson, Associate Superintendent Corporate Services, as Secretary Treasurer for the Sturgeon Public School Division, effective December 1st, 2023. All in favor? Unanimous. Uh, 7.5, draft Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report for November 2023. Shauna.
Thank you. I will just start before I turn it over to our Director of Education Planning, Shannon Campbell-Requa. So just to remind the board that at the Committee of the Whole that you did see the draft AERR, and that there were some great questions that came out and just some clarification language was added. That was around who actually answers the survey. So for grade 7, 4, 7, and 10, and the question was just asked about staff. And so Shannon has updated that wording to say that it is all staff. And then any other input or questions that were asked, there was one other one that was also changed and updated for this version. We did ask the board for any input over the course of a week, but we did not receive any. So there has been no other changes based on feedback from when we presented it at Cal as to when the additional questions or comments were due, which was last Thursday. And so now I can turn it over to Shannon.
Thank you. Shannon Campbell-Requa, Director of Education Planning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you the 2022-23 Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report. Administration is seeking through motion that the Board of Trustees approve the Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report, AERR, as presented in the November 29th public meeting. The AER document for Sturgeon Public Schools is comprised of several key components, including an accountability statement, public interest disclosure, executive summary, and foundational statements. We outline assurance measures in each of the Alberta education domains, and of note, we have included appendices with measure details. In December 2022, there was a disclosure of wrongdoing made in good faith by Sturgeon Public Schools employees under the terms of the Public Interest Disclosure Whistleblower Protection Act. The report is linked both in our AERR document and on our Sturgeon Public Schools website. The AERR is a key part of our division's assurance model. It builds trust and confidence among our diverse stakeholders and evaluates key strategies and results, which are aligned with the education plan that was designed in May of 2022. This is a tool for future education plans and a historical touch point on our progress through the last school year. Our Sturgeon Public Schools vision remains that through a well-rounded education, students are motivated and supported to pursue their unique path to future success. Today, I will walk you through a wide variety of engagement data. The AERR Measures Survey invites students and parents in grades 4, 7, and 10, and all teachers to provide feedback. The Our School Survey, which is an internal measure, invites all students in grades 4 and up and all teachers to participate. I will highlight key measures from each of the following domains: student growth and achievement, teaching and leading, learning supports, governance, and local and societal context. In our first domain, student growth and achievement, I'd like to highlight for you the engagement in literacy and numeracy learning. We can see that we have marginal changes from the previous year, including a 1.3% differential from the provincial averages. When we look at the engagement in detail, we see that parents and students are reporting roughly within 1% of our previous results, and that teachers have seen, again, a marginal or slight increase of 0.8% in terms of engagement. Shifting to citizenship, which is the percentage of teachers, parents, and students who are satisfied that students model the characteristics of active citizenship. we see a decrease of 0.2 point, excuse me, we see a decrease of 2.3% from our previous year results, and we are within the provincial average with a difference of 3.1%. We notice decreases in the reports from parents, students, and teachers, all within less than 3%. This remains a priority area for Sturgeon Public Schools. We are focusing across the division on opportunities for increased leadership and community participation. As part of school education plan development and collaboration, school leaders have been encouraged and have focused on school-wide positive behavior supports and supporting citizenship through the larger community. When examining high school completion rates, we see an improvement over last year of 0.7%, and identify this as an area of ongoing focus as we are 3.8% below the provincial average. As an area of success, we note that our 5-year graduation completion rate has increased by 5% and exceeds the provincial average by 0.4%. Also of note, Indigenous students in Sturgeon Public Schools exceed the province by 7.1%. When we take a look at a provincial achievement test and diploma examination results, we see that students have increased in their acceptable standard overall by 3.8%, and that all students have also increased their standard of excellence marginally by 0.1% over last year. We exceed the provincial average overall by 3.6% in the acceptable standard range and continue to focus on supporting students to achieve excellence as we are within the provincial average or below by 0.7%. In terms of diploma examinations, we exceed the provincial average, or excuse me, we are below the provincial average by 1.8%, but have seen a substantial increase over last year's achievement of 8.5%. We also notice an improvement and an increase of 5.2% in the area of standard of excellence for diploma exams. We continue to focus our strategies on specific goals aligned by department within our high schools to continue to close the gap between provincial averages and achievement within Sturgeon Public Schools. When we examine our local measures, our school survey data around interest and motivation, we see that an increase from elementary students of 3%, or pardon me, a decrease from elementary students of 3% and a decrease from secondary students of 1%. We continue to focus on this area by designing new curriculum, professional development around active, hands-on, and experiential learning. We also focus on providing unique programming, including off-campus, STEAM, career and technology foundations, and career and technology study education. These programs have grown substantially pardon me, over the course of the past year. Shifting to early years literacy and numeracy assessments. Overall, we see this as a continued area of focus for our division. In terms of literacy screens, we see that we have an improvement We also observe a decrease of students at risk in grade 4 of 83. It's important to note that the increase in students is reflective of an increase in difficulty of the assessments at year end, and that we we saw improvement with every single student in terms of the actual number of questions they answered correctly on the assessments. We focused our division intervention in grades 4, and that is the area we saw the greatest number of improvement. In terms of the Alberta Education Numeracy Screen, we saw a decrease in students at risk of 34 in grade 1, a decrease of students at risk of 18 in grade 2, an increase of students at risk in grades 3, and a decrease of students at risk in grade 4 by 15. We continue to focus on systematic intervention for students and the improvement of universal teaching strategies so that we can impact the learning of all students positively. Shifting to the domain of teaching and leading. When we look at education quality, the percentage of teachers, parents, and students who are satisfied with the overall quality of basic education, we see slight decreases from the previous year of 1.4%. This is uniform from our parent, student, and teacher groups with these slight decreases. We aim to continue to align PD, to include leadership and learning coaches, to continue to focus on academic programming in high school, and to involve principals and school leaders in visionary work to continue to address education quality division-wide. We've also introduced therapeutic crisis intervention for schools, which is ongoing professional development that focuses on supporting positive student behavior. We continue to focus on addressing classroom complexity in support of teachers, students, and families. When we look at in-service and professional development, we see an increase of 4.3% of teachers who believe that school authority professional development has been focused, systematic, and contributed significantly to their ongoing professional growth. This measure evaluation puts us in the high achievement range, is improved, and good overall. We continue to offer a robust program of professional learning for teachers, staff members, and school leaders. When we look at our local measures, in terms of rigor, relevance, and effective learning time, we see slight increases in each of these domains. We know that we are moving in the right direction in terms of the degree of students who believe their work, their learning environment is organized and purposeful, that they are receiving relevant classroom instruction, and that classroom time is used effectively. We had staff participate in a professional development survey. There were 91 responses collected. 79% of staff indicated relevant or very relevant when we asked the question about morning sessions that they attended on their division professional development day. 67.5 indicated relevant or very relevant when we asked them about the afternoon sessions. 85.7% of teachers and staff indicated that they agreed or strongly agreed that sessions they attended supporting growth in the area of Indigenous foundational knowledge and understanding to be effective. In order to gather more information about professional learning needs, we implemented a secondary staff survey that had 305 staff respondents, including 209 teachers, 70 educational assistants, and 25 other staff. This survey identified key areas for future professional development, allowing us to be responsive to the emerging needs of our staff. The division identified restorative practices and Indigenous foundational knowledge, truth and reconciliation, and student success as areas of focus, and identified assessment and universal design for learning as areas of strength divisionally. Next, shifting to the domain of learning supports. When we look at welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments, we see a slight decrease overall from our previous year, and we are below the provincial average by 1.7%. When looking at access to supports and services, we see an increase of 0.5%, and we are exceeding the provincial average by 0.4% in this area. In terms of emotional health and anxiety as measured by our school survey, we continue to see that anxiety is an issue for our students, although we do note a decrease for elementary students. We note an increase for secondary students. When we look at the area of advocacy at school, so the number of students who feel they have a safe and caring adult to turn to for advice and encouragement, we see an increase from both elementary and secondary students. In examining the area of parental involvement, which is the percentage of teachers and parents satisfied with parental involvement in decisions about their child's education, we see a decrease from the previous year of 3.5%, and that we are below the provincial average by 4.4%. We continue to focus on improving engagement opportunities with parents. We are looking for ways to reintroduce in-person engagements for families and community members during the 2023 and 2024 school year. We are actively working to increase the opportunity for parent voice and involvement. And at the school levels, administrators create specific goals to address their local community needs in relation to this measure. In terms of stakeholder engagement in the 2022-2023 school year, we invited parents, guardians, students, and staff to provide insights. In terms of our parental engagement survey, we had 440 parents and 2 community members answer the survey. Themes that emerged were that teachers and staff were acknowledged for continuously providing care and dedication towards students. Schools were seen as safe and caring, and communication was highlighted as effective and clear. In terms of areas we could improve upon, we identified dealing with safety issues related to student behavior and discipline, supports for inclusion of learners with diverse needs, and issues related to transportation. The financial planning and reporting section has been updated with accurate information. When we examine the domain of local and societal context, we continue to focus on pursuing opportunities for students to excel, whether that be academics, athletics, arts, STEAM, or off-campus experiences. Sturgeon Public School students are equipped with skills and knowledge they need to excel in today's rapidly evolving world. We continue to focus on career pathways education as a complement to a robust focus on academic achievement division-wide. Of note, 162 students participated in Career Pathways Education, earning over 1,335 credits in a wide variety of unique and vocationally focused learning experiences. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight elements of our Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Can I get a motion? Put on the floor. Dash.
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. I move that the Board of Trustees approve the Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report, AERR, as presented at the November 29th, 2023 Public Board meeting.
Any questions? Joe?
Just that, thank you.
Oh, your mic.
I just have a question around our staff professional development surveys. 91 responses out of all our staff. That concerns me. I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but it's just, I don't know how we improve that, but I believe staff should be a certain way obligated to respond to this. And another thing, I just have to say it, and thank you for all of it, but I as a trustee, I'm a little disappointed in there's some great things in here, but there's lots that have gone the wrong way too. And we've been concentrating on that. And I just wanted to make that comment, and I don't know why, but I have to. But I know we're working hard at it. But, you know, I just, this whole staff professional development survey and response is really disappointing to me. Thank you.
Did you want to respond? Shannon?
Thank you, Shannon Campbell Requa. Indeed, with regard to the staff survey in particular, we felt that 91 respondents was not to our satisfaction. And that's why we offered the second survey where we had the 305. So finding strategies on how we can provide time for staff to complete the survey was a much more effective strategy. And that's why we saw that almost, well, more than tripling the respondents. So we'll continue to focus on making sure staff are able to answer the surveys because we do need that robust information, as you mentioned. Thank you.
Stacy?
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. Just of editing on page 26, there's just where the thought cloud is, there's just a bit of a formatting thing there. But beyond that, I really appreciate this report has an incredible amount of data behind it that has been really well summarized so that we understand the hows and whys. And the trick I find, and just for public knowledge, is that this was based on our efforts at our 2022 education plan, which I know that in the spring of 2023, we're already really focused on a lot of that. We knew that this was how we were moving. So I appreciate that there's some of that highlighted in here, that if you look at our new education plan, we are aware of some of the things we need to work on, because we certainly do have challenges. And going to meet with colleagues on the trustee level and seeing some of their AERR reports and what that looks like, I feel that what the team has put together here is extremely transparent, and it does show our ups and our downs and where we need to work, where sometimes the language is highlighted to be much more positive and kind of wash over some of the challenges. But I think that in education, our kids strive to work harder, and we are clearly doing the same, and we're not trying to hide anything. So I really appreciate the format of this. It is a huge document, and I encourage, our many public online to take a look at it. But I think that the work that goes in behind this is really important, and the narratives and the explanations of what we're doing to correct it is really important too. So I appreciate that. And looking at those diploma or completion years, the 3-year versus the 5-year, I think that coming out of what we've come out of and the changes in our society, I think the fact that our 5-year graduation rate is higher than the provincial average, I think is a great indicator that our kids are coming out to be successful. And looking at the Indigenous population in our schools being much more successful than the provincial average, not quite where we need it to be compared to our student population as a whole. But I think that's really a positive thing to take a look at, that our kids are coming out successful. And if it takes an extra year or two at this point with what we've come through, to me, I see that as a really big win. So I appreciate all of the data, and you've just summarized the summarization in a very short period of time. So thank you for that too.
Cindy?
Cindy Briggs, Ward 2. In-service professional development, the people that did answer, I am so glad they are engaged with our PD sessions that are being offered, so thank you. My biggest concern is under emotional health and anxiety. I realize we have societal issues right now in society, that this isn't isolated to Sturgeon, but our female students are at very high risk in our division. And what are we doing? How are we targeting to help them? Because we're not going to get the achievement that we're looking at if our students aren't feeling safe and belonging in our divisions. So I would love that our division to be the people that other divisions follow. So what are we doing to retain our female students?
Hey, Shannon, I'm like,
Thank you, Shannon Campbell-Requa. Absolutely. I think you highlight something that has been an intentional focus for us as a division. And so examining our approaches through our school counseling, mental health and wellness coaches, and our comprehensive school plans has been really important. But I think what perhaps sets us apart is our approach to including the kinds of supports that we need to include within the curriculum instruction. And so actually working with staff to improve the universal instruction that's happening in classrooms to be becoming safer, more inclusive, and more participatory. Because if students, particularly our female students, find themselves in learning environments where they feel safe, they feel seen, they feel successful, we know that we are going to help prepare them for success in school, but also beyond. And it's not something extra that happens on the side of desks. It's what happens within the learning environment in Sturgeon. We have a ways to go, and our opportunities to work with staff, we have to get creative. But I would also like to bring to you the incredible dedication of many of our teachers, because they also see this as an area where they can provide leadership. So we'll continue to focus on a multi-pronged approach, as well as really being specific about how we can improve the learning environments, because that's what we're actually in the business of doing.
Tasha?
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward 6. Before I get to my concern, just want to say thank you for the multitude of successes within here. And I'm sorry that what we talk about is often the concerns, but just going to early years literacy and numeracy assessments. I guess I'm really concerned with the numbers, but I can accept the explanation. But you mentioned that UDL was going to be a big factor in trying to remedy these numbers. My concern is these are the same kids that came out of COVID. These are the same kids who are getting a curriculum rewrite. These are the same kids that are going into the next division expecting a curriculum rewrite. And do we have the resources to support the learning needs and challenges? UDL is wonderful, but it takes resources, it takes people, it takes time. And do we have that in place to support? In particular, I'm thinking the grade 3s and 4s, you know, where numbers maybe don't look quite as nice. So that's my concern.
Shannon?
Thank you. Over the course of the last year, the board has supported school-based staff, including teachers, additional leadership supports, additional counseling supports. And I have heard time and again that those have been invaluable to those at the school level. By investing in the like the physical resources of staff and teachers, school leaders and classroom staff are feeling more support than they have in known memory. I would like on their behalf to thank you as a board for your commitment to staffing classrooms, because this is making impact. You ask a profound question, is it enough? We're going to use every inch of the resources provided and do our very best.
Janine, you had a question?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just suffering back here. I have concerns with the early years literacy and numeracy assessments, clearly, because some of our numbers jump up. So we test all of the kids at the beginning of the year, and then we test all of the kids at the end of the year. We don't just test those that we were found at risk. And what is the prescribed method by the government? Do they specify? Because I've heard some divisions only test the at-risk ones, so clearly their numbers always go up rather than, you know, having more at-risk. Can you just explain that process to me a little bit?
Shannon?
You are precisely correct. In Sturgeon, we assess all students in the beginning and then all students at the end, because we believe in the transparency that was noted earlier. Other divisions make different decisions in that area, and both methods are okay with, are permitted by Alberta Education. We made this choice intentionally because we want to present the board and our public with the most accurate information possible, and that we will be able to measure change and improvement over time.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. We've had a couple of questions on the floor, I think, about these early year numbers. And I think the additional question related to new curriculum is, in this particular group of young people as they're in grade 3, 4, and in that space. And I want to highlight, it's a little bit specific, but I'd like you to hear it, and we'll bring it again if you want it more unpacked. Some of the very systematic approaches beyond universal design for learning. Universal design for learning is absolutely critical in our classrooms. But in addition, like with our math instruction, you know, we now have a consistent resource from grade 1 through grade 6 that helps teachers plan lessons around math instruction. That's mathology, not something Mathology. If you haven't heard that before, I know I've said mathletics and things all start with math, and I apologize for a lot of the same words, but mathology really has a lot of like how to present lessons, how to engage students with math instruction, and we now have it grade 1 to 6. We also have a resource for students that are presenting at risk. That's leaps and bounds. That's early years where, oh, this student is at risk with this particular, I'm totally making this up, counting by twos, or this particular addition, two-digit addition. And so that resource, which we didn't have before, helps teachers go, okay, I'm going to work with this group of 4 students within my group of 25 students that has this challenge. And here's like 5 activities I do over the week that specifically addresses that. So that is a new resource. When we think about literacy and approaches to how to read, we're working with a very cohesive plan across our division that layers of reading. You've heard that before, you know, that really talks about when we do phonomic, when we do decodable words, when we, and that also has been supported by Shannon's team in relation to the new curriculum. So what I want to give encouragement, these numbers are hard, is that our approach is not just more of, or teachers will do better. It's actually, okay, what can we be more cohesive on? What supports can be research-based that will help reading develop earlier and number sense develop stronger? So those are just some of the things that I know Shannon's team have put and are now supporting through professional learning groups and professional development, so all of our teachers know how to understand the resources. So just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Trish? Trish Murray Elliott, Ward 4. Yes, thank you everyone for compiling this report. It's awesome. And I just want to go back to the mental health that Cindy had brought up. When I was at Student Advisory Council yesterday, I heard something that just broke my heart. And it was a great group of students talking about supports in the school and access to counselors. And someone said, yeah, but if you see a counselor, then everybody knows. And they all nodded in agreement and went on. So it's unfortunate that we still have that stigma there. I'm hoping that as we're presenting social emotional learning skills to our younger students, that as they grow, they will be more comfortable with dealing with it and accessing supports. However, I feel our young female students, as they get to a certain age, are going to be subjected to peer pressure and social media pressures and that sort of thing. So I hope that we can provide specific supports to this at-risk group.
Cindy?
Talking about the early literacy, I think from the way I'm thinking, I think we have to remember that the early literacy students didn't have their roots firmly taught because they were a product of COVID, and I hope that word goes away. But I think those numbers are definitely reflecting they didn't get those firm roots in the education system like some of our other students did. So I think we have to look at those numbers kind of with that in mind.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that this is 2022, 2023 report, and they used that data to make our 2023 to 2026 ed plan. So it captures those strategies. So if anybody else online wanted to know, they could definitely pull up our ed plan on the website. So seeing no further questions, I'm going to call the question that the Board of Trustees approve the Sturgeon Public Schools Annual Education Results Report, AERR, as presented at the November 29th Public School Board. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, this time I would like to take a 10-minute health and wellness break, and we will come back at I have, it's 10:19, so 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody online. Janine, are you back? There you are. Okay. 8.1 Sturgeon Public School Scholarships 2022-2023. Mr. Conrad.
Thank you, Board Chair Jonathan Conrad, Deputy Superintendent, looking for his report. My apologies. This report is for the board's information, and I am going to suggest it's a good news report. I know bringing you information about our success of our students and your support of their next steps through scholarship should be a celebration. But in this case, what I want to celebrate is also that we had an increase in the number of young people that met our requirements, got their applications in, and indicated, yep, I'm enrolled in post-secondary and have received the scholarships that either the board has directly organized and set aside funding for, or other groups that we administer have set up for us. So provided for your information here is some like some numbers you can look through. You can see, we've got 28 as the Sturgeon Public Scholarship across Redwater, Sturgeon Comp, and our learning centers. And then the maximum for the bursaries, Frank Robinson and the Conica Minolta in each school. That's why those numbers are lower, because that's what the numbers allow. And as I led into, and I apologize for my stumble into it, but I really do want to let you know this is a good news story. It's excellent our students are achieving, and we're very thankful for the board's support of that achievement. Prepared to take any questions.
Stacy?
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. I think this is fantastic, and it's great to see that there's an increase in students accessing these. I was able to attend the Sturgeon Composite High School award ceremony, where it was amazing the number of kids that are achieving some academic excellence. My one concern was when I was reading the criteria for our division award, so that would be the scholarship and bursary, I believe, is I feel like there's a bit of a barrier to application. So maybe you can explain the process a bit for me, that by September of their grade 12 year, they need to be applying for a scholarship in that first month, where maybe they're not even sure which courses they're going to take. And so I'm not sure, is there a counselor that recommends that they apply for the scholarship ahead of time? Is there a group of kids that maybe aren't applying because they weren't told that, like, maybe they would try harder if they knew it existed, but maybe they didn't have great grade 11 marks, so they wouldn't bother applying in September? I'm just curious about the process and how the information is brought out to all of the students who may be able to try for that. Thanks.
Mr. Conrad.
Thank you, Trustee Buga. Excellent question. I'm personally connected through, and also Nisha supports me with this, communicate to the counselors in each of our centers. So that's learning centers, but also, Redwater and Sturgeon Composite, and have walked through with them, like, what is your process? And their process is communication home, communication into classroom. We do social media posts, we do all sorts of things to really say, hey, this is available. And applications actually come in early on. They're due in September. The key piece is that enrollment in post-secondary, because we need that confirmation. We've had some people fully qualify and we're ready to award them, and then they don't engage. And so this money is to encourage that enrollment. We have, if they meet all the requirements, operationalize this so that if they get a letter of enrollment in the next semester, they start in a winter semester or fall, and you'll see even a few others that took, because of COVID for sure, took a year before they engaged. We still honor that they are a Sturgeon student. They met all the academic requirements. They are engaged in a post-secondary institution, and we still administered and shared this award with them. The key there is they often might miss a cycle to being celebrated with their peers at an award ceremony and being read out because if they're a half or a cycle behind, but we still make sure that support is in place for them. So coming back to that, I have very recently talked through the counselors at both high schools, and they do have a robust communication program in place. And I suggest our good grade 12s achieving well should be present and keeping their ears open for get this application in. Even if you're not sure, please do.
Sorry, but their application would have been due in September, so maybe they're not sure how their grade 12 year was going. The following.
Yeah, no, I want to say that like that due is that last piece, that confirmation of enrollment. We have grade 12s that apply within June, they apply throughout summer, they apply as they can. And then the confirmation, we run their detailed record of academic achievement in the fall, so we get any finalized marks. And then we need that letter that they're there. So that fall piece is not that's when calls are made or reached out. All the pressure is put on these good young people to get their applications going. It's that in fall. That means that September, we have to have that confirmation of enrollment because this is to offset the costs of going into post-secondary.
Stacy.
Thank you. And I think that my misconception was because the awards that we just attended were for the 2022 year, and it said they must have applied by September 2023. And so I was thinking that in their grade 12 year, they had to apply in their first month. And I was like, how would they even know? This makes much more sense, and I appreciate the clarification for my own grade 12 student.
I just have a question and it's I think for me. So the Sturgeon Public Schools Scholarship and the Sturgeon Public Schools Bursary, those come out of our budget, correct? And then the Frank Robertson Memorial and the Minolta one are like money that's in trust or whatever. Is that correct, Jonathan?
That is correct. The Sturgeon Public School Scholarship and the bursary are monies the board directly sets aside, and the Frank Robinson Memorial is held in trust, and the Conica Minolta, they sponsor that each year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. 8.2, the Morinville traffic bylaw.
Thank you, Chair. Administration is bringing forward as information changes to the traffic safety bylaws for the town of Morinville. Attachments are included as information. As a result of the bylaw changes, transportation services adjusted 2 bus stops. These changes were necessitated by the bylaw change to flashing light pickups on 100th Avenue and 100th Street. Bus stops were relocated in September of 2023, and there's been minimal impact as a result of these changes, and administration is prepared to respond to questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Stacy?
Just a comment, actually. Just that I appreciated the collaboration between the school division and the town in order to actually make these changes, because they were aware of the impact that it may have on our bus routes for us and our sister boards. And I think that the communication process was well thought out. So shout out to our team as well as the town of Morinville for engaging with us as well.
Thank you for those comments. The communication stream between the town of Morinville and the manager of transportation is very strong. And as a result, we were made aware of these changes way before they were communicated out so we could respond. And we appreciate that relationship and that ongoing communication with the town.
Okay. 8.3 communications report for November of 23. Mr. Conrad.
Thank you, Chair John Conrad, Deputy Superintendent. Sharing for your information is our monthly communication report honoring the board's value of open and transparent communication. Some of the highlights here would be actually planning. I'll just speak slightly off script here. Planning for the pre-K and kindergarten expo is well at hand, and early next year, very soon you'll hear about the events happening early next year to ensure our communities know the strong programming we have for early childhood. Because it is one of the most meaningful ways we can support young learners is if you have some challenges to engage in our programs to address those needs. So communications is very, very involved in supporting, and we'll be highlighting those. I believe it's next month. We'll be hearing some from these STEAM teams. I don't know if you saw the videos of the pumpkin dropping, but it's quite fun that we've had some collaboration with the town here to support, our young people and building challenges and seeing how their challenges go. I feel like I really hijacked the communication team for this next part, but I'll clarify. Multi-factor authentication needs clarity of communication internally. So we have been asking that team to ensure a lot of internal communication is happening there. You wouldn't have seen that on Facebook or Instagram or those other public means, but we did need a lot of communication help from them there. Métis Week, I hope you engaged in activities in the local schools or saw some of the posts coming out of how we honor Métis culture and to learn more about who the Métis are and how we can ensure that they're part of our communities. And of course, shouldn't say of course, but seasons change with sports. We just went through the season ending of volleyball sports, and so there was quite a few championships. Congratulations to our teams, and that was shared through and highlighted by our communications team and by our schools as well. Then the division newsletter. I hope that link is still working because I think it is a great thing for all of our parents, anyone listening online. If they haven't subscribed yet to our newsletter, I encourage that. It is a broader picture than a local school, but it helps create the Sturgeon connection and highlights many of the different things we talked about. Many of you I know were engaged in our Remembrance Day ceremonies across schools, and we appreciate that. And hopefully saw some of that imagery that our young people are learning about that and honoring the people that have and do serve in our communities. And as we do, we end with some of the highlights that you can see that stories that have been picked up by local media, and then some of the events to come. Any questions?
Stacy?
Stacy Buca, Ward 5. I appreciate seeing some of the internal communication work as well, because that's really important. And I think that we've, for the last few years, really focused on relationship building. So it's good to see that there is a variety of communication happening, not just in the media. And I loved the Sturgeon All-Stars from the volleyball teams, where there was kids from every school highlighted. I thought that was fantastic. I saw all of our schools sharing them. I saw lots of parents sharing them. And it was just a really, really positive thing. And my kids saw it and was like, hey, I know him. So it was fantastic. I really like that initiative. I don't know if that's happened before, but this was the first time I've seen it. And I thought that was fantastic for shareability. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. 8.4, 2023-2024 Superintendent Discretionary Fund. Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Shauna Warren, Superintendent. As provided each month, this is an update on where the superintendent discretionary funds have been allocated. Just before I read this, it was brought as the board chair. We went through the package last Friday to go through, and a question came up, and I thought, this would be a very opportune time to say it out loud to make sure everybody hears it. So in the spring, when we are getting ready to approve the budget, and then you approve the upcoming budget, so you approve the 23-24 budget. Part of that, of course, is the RPT, which stands for the Resource Planning Tool, which is the FTE allocation to the schools. So that is set in the spring, it's passed, and that gives their teacher numbers, support staff, etc. So that, of course, is based on our projections. So then in September, as you know, bums and seats, we see the eyeballs of students, then we actually do our enrollment counts. And so at the end of September 30th, what we do is some of our schools might have a 0.01 teacher FT or a 0.1, 0.8 that's left over, that they actually have sometimes all full-time teachers in their building. So those little bits of FTE are actually clawed back, or their enrollment is down, or a little bit of changes. So what we do at the end of the September 30th is we look at the additional FTE that still was allocated. So the dollars were allocated to our schools, but that is not used each individual school. We pull it all back together. So those dollars are used first before the superintendent discretionary is used. So I just wanted to update you to let you know that as we did that at the end of September, and so during October, November, the additional FT that was brought back into a central pool was used to support two of our schools. So one of them was, because the question was just brought about because some trustees heard about Four Winds had large grade 9 classes and how could they support them. So the principal put through a proposal to bump up one of the teachers that was part-time to full-time to support the large grade 9 classes in same thing in the core classes. So that was added to Four Winds using the RPT pool of FTE. And Sturgeon Comp had for their math numbers for semester 2, had asked, they wanted to increase a teacher for semester 2 to support quite large numbers in their math 30-1-2 classes. And so that also came out of that. So not reported, not coming out of my superintendent discretionary because it was already allocated in dollars for our schools. So just wanted to give you that clarification in case you were wondering, because I believe it may have come up maybe at a school counselor or something just about some pressures, whether it was a comp or Four Winds. So for, again, I always highlight previously what you saw before where FTE was allocated in resources. And so the update for this month is that, and this is retroactive, the first one, part of our 23-24 reserve mitigation strategy that was brought to the board. You will remember that we are piloting child and youth care workers across our schools. And so we had targeted specific schools. And so we had projected a cost, and this is a new position in our division. So based on the actual costs, there needed to be some funds that came out of the superintendent discretionary to cover the additional costs of those positions. So that's the first piece. An additional 0.2 FTE teacher at Guthrie School, and same thing to support a large grade 9 class for core classes, and then 0.38 FTE of teacher at Namao School to support large grades 4, 5, and a 4-5 split class during core classes, the same thing. And then lastly, additional 0.1 FTE teacher at Landing Trail School to support at-risk students accessing the strategies classroom. And that was around strategies. And also you heard about the SPARK program, the supervised recess program. So, and again, when this happens, principals are putting forward a proposal and we go by the needs in the school. So that is my updated report and expenses that have come out of my superintendent discretionary budget.
Cute. And Trish. So even though these are coming out of your discretionary budget, I'm assuming that the 0.1 or the 0.2 is just added on to someone that's already in the school?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. Yes, and so for those two, it was teachers that were or are part-time, and because it's very difficult to hire a point whatever that's there, and so the principals only put forward their proposals for these ones that are there. They're bumping up current teacher FT. Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. 8.5 Superintendent Report.
Provided for information is in my report. Again, it is the same with every month. It is providing you a high level of information based on the superintendent leadership quality standard. that I'm required to meet. And also, I do want to say, because the question was just asked about the deputy's report. And so, Mr. Conrad, that deputy report will be coming every second month. So it won't be every month. It'll be coming every second month. That's also, as you'll notice, it's often a duplicate because it's the work in the division. So we're trying not to give you duplicate information. And so his will be coming every second month, just for clarification.
First of all, thank you, Shauna. I really like this report. It helps outline all the great things that are happening in the division. And I know it probably takes a lot of time, but I really enjoy it. But it did trigger a couple of questions for me. One of them starts with the director of the CASA Mental Health conducted a tour. So who's on that tour? Were they taking like government people around or just?
That is a great question. No, that is just operationally people, boots on the ground. Because as you know, as they tried to expand the program, they want to see how it's going. So no, that is just their director that came out just to see the classrooms in action. They have reached out to us though. This is a very beginning information. We just received it and I've had no date, no nothing. They just reached out to ask if the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction could come out and tour. And so I responded back, I would like more information. I don't know a date. They threw out a February, but again, as the board, I'll just remind the board that this was actually planned. They were supposed to happen, remember, and it did not happen before. It was actually both the Minister of Education and Minister of Health and Addiction, but that did not happen. But I will ensure that the board is apprised of that.
Trish?
And also I read that you were asked to host a session at the CAS Fall Conference. And what was the topic of that session? I thought that was interesting.
Well, when it says host, the superintendents at CAS, you actually introduce the session that's coming. So you introduce them, you talk about what's coming. And so, no, there was not presenting of information. Maybe one day, but that is will be in the future. I will ensure the board is aware of wherever presenting on anything that's happening in the division.
Stacy?
Stacy Bucco, Ward 5. Yeah, I have to mirror what Trish said. I really like this report. There's a lot of information in here that really doesn't show up in other places until, you know, we start to dig into it. So I think this is fantastic. And I just want to say thank you for attending some of the trustee. It was a lot of time this month spent at trustee associations that you were able to join with us to help understand the language that we are hearing at the governance level, as well as join in the conversations with us as we try to digest things in a local context as well. So I really appreciate the time and effort you put out to join us at some of these very long days.
Trish? That, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. 9.1. Chair's report. It will be in the minutes. The only things I just wanted to highlight is I thought we had great conversation at PSBC, which I'm sure we will hear in the report. When we had is it associate deputy minister? Is that what the A is?
Assistant
Deputy Minister. So assistant deputy ministers and directors from Alberta Ed were at PSBC, and it was great to engage in questions with them. And then also family services and mental health. So I'm not going to take away from that report though. So that's all. And then the MLA breakfast at ASBA, I thought was great to mingle with them, we got a picture with Mr. Getson, and yeah, so other than that, it's just been a busy month. Looking forward to Christmas concerts next month. I will start to my right with Trish.
Trish Marie Elliott, Ward 4. My trustee report has been submitted. Some of the events I attended that were memorable to me was the Redwater Awards Night, which was really amazing. Very glad I attended that. Very well done. The Remembrance Day ceremony at Sturgeon Comp High School was outstanding. We had a very high-ranking member from the base who gave a talk, and I had to kind of zone out so I didn't start bawling up there on stage. But we also had the high school band and the high school choir, so it was just overall a fantastic experience, and we had a lot of community members and join us also, municipal members and whatnot, so that was really nice. The Council of School Councils meeting I thought was really interesting this time, and I thought it was, people were a lot more engaged and starting to come out of their shells and share more with each other. So I think that's headed in a great direction. The Sturgeon Heights School Council meeting, the one thing of note from that was a comment on our new assessment. How did they word that? It was, they would like more consistent reporting on, because we're doing the assessments differently than we were in the past, but they're finding a little bit of inconsistent reporting. Some teachers are putting a lot more information than others. So that was just the topic from that. Sturgeon Comp High School was great. When I walked in, I was told we were going to have 8 to 10 people in attendance, which terrified me at first, wondering, okay, what's the topic that's going on? But it was great. It was just a lot of really engaged parents have been contacted and brought into our meeting, and we had a really nice time. There were 8 parents plus Stacy plus another one online, and so I think we're going in a really positive direction with that. The comp, of course, has a lot going on. They there's too much to even talk about here. But and the student advisory committee from yesterday was, again, things just keep getting better. So I appreciate all the work that went into that from our administration and from Stacy for chairing that, co-chairing that. And that's it.
Tasha Otway McClay, Ward. My report's available for review. I would just echo Trisha's comments on our first COSC meeting of the year. I really appreciated the format of it, and I can't wait to hear some of the feedback from whomever was compiling feedback. The only other thing I'll mention is that at Guthrie School, Mr. Wicks is working diligently to try and improve communications. They have many means. It's a case of you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So he's looking at maybe some different strategies that might help, specifically around parents' use and understanding of PowerSchool. Another interesting piece was that the parents are compiling a handbook for new parents and students to the community. Because Guthrie is military, people are coming and going regularly. used to be a little bit more consistent as to when they would come and go, and now it's sort of everywhere. So they have a group of new parents who came in this year who are working on that, and then they have a French first language parent who has offered to translate the whole thing into French for families coming from French-speaking communities. So I thought that was really, really exciting and a great example of the really great things that parent councils can do. So, thanks.
Stacy Bugle, Ward 5. My report has been submitted, is in the package. I did lots of extra things, but one was at Four Winds School Council. We officially have a PFA at Four Winds now, which we haven't yet. So this is very exciting that we can start to organize a little bit better. We've had various groups fundraising for various things, but now we have opportunity to create a bit more of a cohesive school community group there. They followed their school council with the ICE presentation. So that's Internet Child Exploitation Division of the police. One of the officers is a Four Winds parent. So it's fantastic that they come out and share their time for that. There was about 30 parents in attendance, along with one of our municipal counselors who is also a parent, but we also had our division principal there, Carrie Morgan, our principal and vice principal from Four Winds, and I believe one of the teachers as well. So it was good to see that there is a bit of buy-in there. I know that other trustees have also attended. Attended the ASBA awards and FGM and PD, as well as the Rural Caucus and Public School Board Conference, which was a lot of information in 5 days, but it was very valuable. And I encourage, whenever anybody has the time to participate in those. The PD was fantastic across the board. I thought that everything was quite informational. Now I'm terrified of AI, but they kind of overwhelmed me on that one, but maybe that's time that we get, our heads around it a little bit. The awards night at Sturgeon Comp was fantastic, of course. And I was able to go to Camilla for one of their Chef Wars judging alongside Sturgeon County Councillor Deanna Stang. So that was fun to meet with other councillors and really show how we're engaged in our schools at every level. Our schools are supported, and it was fantastic. And we ate spaghetti, and it was good stuff. Thank you. And I'm open for any questions.
Cindy Briggs, Ward 2. My report is in the package for review. The award ceremony, as Trish did say, at Redwater was amazing, and congratulations to all the students. I did want to echo, I was unable to attend the Council of School Councils, but our chair at Lillian Schick's school was amazed at all the work that Sturgeon School Division, she's new to our division, has gone to supply for all the school council chairs. She was from our neighboring division, G Sacred, and she could not believe how wonderful the event was. So I apologize, I missed it, but good job to the event team.
Again, we had a huge Remembrance Day celebration there that went really well, and all the other things in school council meetings and that. But coming out of that, a couple things I want to talk about is the Rotary again. And I talked about this last time a little bit about the Interact group that's been started at Sturgeon High. Well, it's a go. And we had a float in the Christmas parade, and 8 of those members showed up, and it hasn't even really started yet. And I have to say that these 8 young people that were there were very energetic, and I got a lot of promise and hope there that this is going to turn out really well. It was 8 girls actually, and boy, it's just like they just led us in this whole event. So, and also just for this group's sake, and they have their first meeting tomorrow at the high school. We have a couple of Rotary members going out, but it's all about leadership, and we're going to start them off with a $4,000 account. And so they'll see that tomorrow probably, but I just gotta, I'm just really excited about it and looking forward to it, and just shows again leadership. It's all about leadership in the community, and an Interact group. And there's things that come out of that Interact group, like exchange students with different countries and all that stuff. And I mean, it's 40 grand to do that, and Rotary will step up to the plate on that 40 grand. So there's some huge things and opportunity here for our leadership students throughout this. And again, Rotary is worldwide, and so there's lots of learnings there and lots of things. So I went to that ICE presentation last night in Camilla. We had about 20 people there, which personally disappoints me. I think 500 people in the school, and such an important aspect of some of the problems in our society and learnings that are there, that we only get 20 parents out. But I guess to them, that was a good crowd, which is amazes me. But I have to say that it's just it's scary. And I think some of our people think it doesn't happen in our area, but there was over 100 cases that related to our area, and I think we need to wake up to that. One of the things that got brought up by one of the parents there was, where are the teachers? And the teachers weren't even invited to it. I think half of them maybe even knew about it, but it brought up a point that they're probably with their kids more than some of the parents are. And there's a lot about recognition of problems and acting on that. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for some kind of PD around it, not just leave it at that. But it is scary. And you talk about AI. Here's a case where these predators are using AI. They're starting to use it now. And just think of the capabilities of AI and what that might mean in the future. And suicides are becoming very evident with young kids in some of this action. So it's something we've got to keep up front and use every opportunity we can to learn about it, so that prevention, and we have to do something, and parents have to do something, because there was 3,400 cases and they look at maybe 100 of them. And that's just, I think that was all of Alberta or Red Deer North. I can't remember, but they only get to really seriously on about 100 of them. Now, they don't ignore the other ones. They get out to local authorities and stuff like that, but still it's huge. And it's actually, if you sit in those and listen, I don't know if it affects you like it affects me, it's scary. And I'll throw I know it's a public meeting, but I'm going to throw my personal opinion in. Again, it's family structure. It's about, these kids I think they need to trust somebody that they can come to when there's a problem. And a lot of them aren't there, especially the older ones. Younger seems to be, I think it was at 47% or something. Say if you're at these, you can correct me on my percentages, but 47% of your younger students will go to somebody and say, hey, this is happening, I'm embarrassed. But from 13 to 17, it was down to like 16% that would look for help. 16 or 17%, I think. Anyways, I think it's a big issue. I'm not smart enough to know where we go with this, but I think it comes down to our students trusting our teachers, trusting our parents, trusting our family and friends, and being able to talk to somebody when they make a mistake. Go ahead, Tasha.
I would like to echo your concerns about potentially some professional development for teachers. I heard the whole thing is shocking, but I heard something that actually gave me pause last night. It's male youth that are being targeted for sextortion. Males. So where we always think, well, it's the girls are being preyed on. I was shocked to find out that it's predominantly male youth. So I would support that argument for some PD.
So we can look at that in the future if there's something. The other thing I just want present to all of you is an ag presentation I was at River Park Agricultural Society. And the reason I bring this up is that because of the gym and the 4 classrooms that we didn't demolish and were smart enough to let them use. They are almost book solid already. And they had to spend a lot of money because when we separated the old building to that, there was no heating anymore. All that was separated, and a lot of electrical, a lot of things. So, you know, they had to spend a lot of money on getting these back into a place where they could use, and the roof of the gym leaked. So, but they did all that, and the community did it all, which I'm very proud about. But there's 4-H using it full time. They got one of the classrooms, and they use it full time. There's about 3 4-H groups in the area that use it, and it's theirs. And they've got it labeled 4-H and all that stuff. There's a new dance group that rents one of the classrooms and uses it full time now. Well, I think 2 or 3 days a week. Karate is another one, and next year they plan on. They just started this year, so it's a limited. But next year they basically want one of the rooms full time and rent it. There's daycare looking at what's 2 of them, which ain't probably going to happen. I don't know. And Sturgeon County programs, they basically all summer and fall have been using the gym. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that it's the community, it's well used with what we turned over. And there's a lot of professionalism around them, and the value in what happened there has proven itself in 1 year. In 1 year. So, and they also hired a professional manager that's gone to university in this, and that's managing the arena, the gym, the 4 classrooms. So it's become a huge recreational wellness, all those things. So if anybody had any doubts, please don't. It's it turned out very well. So I just wanted to present that, and thank you. That's my report.
Janine. Just in case you didn't know, it was your turn. It's your turn.
I knew it was my turn. I apologize for my report not being in the package. It has been updated now to my Google Drive, so sorry I haven't gotten out my couch. I attended Redwater School Awards on November 2nd, which as a trustee, I'm always super proud to attend, and as a parent, it's even better. So twofold for me that night, and it was great. Thank you guys for coming out and supporting Redwater School. I really appreciate it. I had Remembrance Day ceremonies, committee of the whole, council of school councils, everything that everybody else did. Unfortunately, Ochre Park's parent council this month was on the same night as the Redwater Awards, so I didn't attend their parent council, but I will be at their next one. And that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you. And now I'll go back up to what I missed at 9.1.1. Sorry, I jumped right to 9.2. The letter from Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools, I forwarded it to you this morning. I apologize for the delay. I actually thought I sent it and I hadn't, so my apologies. But it's there for your review. So we had sent a letter September 15th. They replied back October 31st, saying, thank you. They welcome wholeheartedly the prospect of meeting to discuss shared goals and initiatives. However, they are initiated into a community engagement initiative, and that is taking up their time. So they want to conclude that before they look at scheduling a meeting between our boards. But you will have the letters in your email that you can look closer at. And then 9.2.1, the board strategic work. Sorry, now I'm flipping tabs here. One of the things I wanted to address on that is I think we need to look at trying to book the meetings with our MLAs. And trying to get it in on a Wednesday that we're here, that probably more of a cow day than a public board meeting day. But we'll have to see what their schedule is like. So that's the one thing I wanted to bring forward as an action item. That can we start, is it okay if we start sending letters to them? Let's offer a few Wednesdays in the new year and see what they can do for a meeting. Does that sound like a good idea? So we will get administration to put together a letter on our behalf to send out to our MLAs. For the new year. Stacy.
On a related note, did we send a similar letter to St. Albert Public Schools, or did we only send it to?
Very good point. No, we had only sent it to G Sacred, but you're right. We should send one to St. Albert Public because they came and asked, they would like to do some collaborating with us. So we will send one to them as well. How is everybody feeling about our strategic plan? Any other things action items that we need to bring to the forefront? Stacy?
Sorry, I should just leave my mic on. Stacy Buga, Ward 5. Can we, I know on our focus on community meet and greet events, ensure trustee representation and communication between administration and trustees to have representation. I know that we have dates lined up for the early in the new year for events in each community. Can we maybe just unpack quickly what the format and what maybe the goal of those conversations is? As I'm bringing it to my councils, I'm not completely sure when they ask me, okay, what are we talking about that night? I'm not 100% if we are reviewing, AERR, or if we are looking for specific feedback. Would we be able to get just a briefing for speaking notes prior to the event?
Are you talking about the engagement sessions?
Yes. Thank you.
I will turn it over to John, but I can put it in your trustee speaking notes so that you've got it also.
Thank you, John Conrad. That was more information than I was going to say, but I was going to say, the focus of our community engagement is to definitely host conversations with our community so that parents can come and tell us, broad themes. We've said this before, but we'll look for specifics, but it's, what are we doing well to continue to do well, and what are areas that we can improve? That's the focus of come to us. Let's be a community together. Let's grow strong young kids in schools. That's the focus, but we will be providing clear information ahead of time. So thanks.
And I know that the kindergarten expo is going to be coming up. Could we get the dates for those so we could see if we want trustees forward facing? See if we can get somebody or a few to be able to go to those expos just to be present. Shauna?
Yes, I don't think the invites came out to trustees yet, Mr. Conrad, because we talked about that. So I just want to unpack with you. So it's just some history on that. These are based on watching other divisions around us, and our pre-K and K enrollment numbers are lower. So this is very targeted. These are 2 community nights where it is in two centralized locations, and it's a beginning information. This year, and at that night, all of our schools will be providing, there'll be some summary sheets there on the schools. So wherever people are coming from, their catchment. Then when their schools have their open houses, pre-K and K is part of that. So we're trying to make it more of a whole school approach, just so you know. So this is different from the past of how we're doing this. Those 2 evenings, now we want to be really mindful because these are our family with the littlest of people, as in 2 years old. So we want to keep the window of when they're out this small, because if we make the evening long, they just leave. So you are going to get an invite. I would please encourage you to come. And then, yes, you should decide once those invites are out. They're in 2 separate locations. One is at Four Winds and the other one is at Oak Park School. No, Redwater, Oak Park. Oak Park, which one? Redwater, Oak Park, which one? Yes, I was just doing highlighting of what it's about, and then feel free to. So, like Redwater. So Redwater School. And I'll let Mr. Conrad give you the specific dates because calendar invites are going to come to you. We would like, I'm going to have this short of a, like, what do we say, 10 seconds to 30 seconds maximum. So whether chair, whoever trustee who would like to, really short to get up to say hi, welcome. And then it will very much be our early learning team talking about what does pre-kindergarten, kindergarten program look like in the division. It's not a promoting of each individual school. It's high level to get them to come. And we want to keep the evening short so we can really support our families with littles, because you know how long evenings does not work well. So that's what it's about. And now I'll turn it over since the invites are coming out, and then who can make it to what, and then who would be speaking in its, they said they told me they'll yank me off the stage if I'm longer than that long. So I said, okay, they'll cut my mic off. Like it was at ASBA when they were cutting the mics off. Yeah.
Actually, at this point, I don't think I have much more in terms of just dates, in that it's January 16th, 6 to 7:30, and January 17th. Oh, I should say where those are, sorry. January 16th, 6 to 7:30 at Redwater, and January 17th, 6 to 7:30 at Four Winds. And just as our superintendent described, you know, we have to be mindful of time with parents and little ones, but there will be some broad, some great, some programming, and then there will be some time with some table direct conversation so that parents might talk directly to an OT or directly to an SLP or directly to some other people highlighting French and STEAM and such like. So it'll be that mix program and mill around and connect.
Thank you. My thoughts is just a face, not a little speech, but you guys can figure that out. I'm gonna be on a beach, so I won't be at these. But yeah. Okay. Just
I just have a question essentially. I think these are great that we're doing this. I do find it odd that we're having it at Redwater School and not Ochre Park, because part of the selling feature when you're bringing your littles into school is the atmosphere. So I find it strange in the fact that we're doing it at a higher level. That's just my comment. And I'm sure you have reasoning, but.
So you'll note it's at Four Winds also.
Mm-hmm.
And because we unpacked this. So these are truly high level. Hey, come to Sturgeon for your choice for little people education. If we felt if we purposely put it in one of our schools, then are we promoting one school's programming over another? Because our next step is to really encourage those families to go to the open house. So they actually get to then go in the classrooms with the pre-K teachers, see all the stuff as part of the open house. We just wanted to have a location in the north part of the division, one more centrally, to try to offer it to, and also the timing is very important because as you know, January is when these all start. And so it's the first time of us trying it this way. And for us, we're gonna try it, see, we'll get feedback, see how it goes, because as you remember, our old model was, it was individual schools, right? The team was just going to every school that had pre-KK programming and doing this. And because we really wanted to put our open houses as inclusive, the whole school programming, we thought that this would be a good way to, we're creating fact sheets about individual schools, but our programming, like John said, we're highlighting our programming at different schools also, not just in those grades. And then, yeah, so it's more of a showcase whole division, but Paige got a little one. And then, as you know, for pre-K, then it's about screening dates too. It gives that information about how to get your child screened. So we're gonna try it. First year, new format. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and on that one, I know that both the St. Albert school divisions do host them at their high schools. I think it's just bigger turnout. They can handle a bigger crowd too. I was also going to ask that on our strategic plan, focus on excellence in education. The future French immersion programming is in there. I would just like to ask that maybe at a committee of the whole, maybe not next month, maybe that's too soon, but I'm hoping that maybe we can start that conversation in the next few months, if possible. I hate to leave it too long because I really want to make sure that I can support the families with French immersion kids while they're looking at registering for next year, because the school landscape is changing quite a bit in our province. And I really don't want our French immersion families to start looking elsewhere if we don't have a really clear goal. So I'm hoping that we can have that conversation prior to maybe March, just so that I can share that with our families. Thank you. Action.
Tasha Owen-Clay, Ward 6. On that same sort of vein, there's funding for non-core programming such as music, art, and Pew. I'd like those conversations to occur in the early part of the new year as well, because we will be beginning our budget conversations in April, and I think it is important that we have some information or some maybe potentially presentations regarding that, so that we can make the best funding choices possible.
And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was in focus on optimal student learning. We have book study, governance learning, and other board PD. I was wondering what your guys' thought might be if we took some time at Cal to look at the modules that PSBAA has given to us or access to, and maybe work through them. Oh, Stacey's ahead of us. I know it.
I'm on module 5, but they are reading. It is as up to module 5 so far. It's information and it's broken down very well, but it is just reading. It doesn't take long, but we would just be very quiet in a room and could chat about it afterwards. But just so the expectation, if we're doing it as a group, it might be easier for us to do the readings on our own and maybe just set some time to discuss that module. As far as the first 3, I think we're very baseline governance, but as number 4, number 5, they're getting into a little more detail, kind of grittier topics. And so I think that it's going to be quite valuable. And I was thinking that that might be something we could work through. The first ones, though, are very much what we've talked about, just as an aside.
That's awesome, because I actually didn't want to start at module 1 myself personally, because yeah, I don't know. It's like reading the last chapter in a book. It's a weird thing, I guess. But yes, thank you very much for that feedback. That's a good thing to know. But it won't be for next week's Cal. Okay. Any other discussion on our strategic plan? Okay, thank you for the discussion on that. 9.2.2, I just wanted to bring to the board. Bless Cindy. Their Bon Accord community, no, town of Bon Accord. If you recall discussions we've had previously, they had reached out to the division, and Cindy had attended some meetings in regards to that, the gravel road past Lillian Chick School. And I turn it over to you now.
I'd like to thank our board chair for this little introductory. So just to give you some background information, and Mrs. Kike was tag teaming with me, so you can chime in anytime. So this started in August. I received some calls from our Division 5 counselor from Sturgeon County. She was getting calls about the road in front of Lillian Chick School on how terrible it was and a multitude of things. People thought it was Sturgeon County Road because it was a gravel road. In fact, it's Town of Bon Accord Road. So I brought those concerns, which we've had concerns for almost 40 years with that road since the school's been built. It is still a gravel road. It is still a high volume of traffic. It's very single lane, essentially, in some places, very deep ditches. We have children walking on that road because there's no accessible sidewalk, there's no street lights. So it should have been fixed 40 years ago, but it still hasn't. So here we are. So I did attend a meeting in August. Mrs. Kike, were you at that meeting in August? Yes. Ruth was at that meeting in August. Then there was another meeting in September. Honorable Dale Nally was at that meeting. He did see the concerns, and they are requesting another meeting because they would like a letter of support. And I'm not exactly sure. I need to clarify with them. They want a letter of support to send to Sturgeon County because it's going to cost $2.4 million. We support them writing this letter to Sturgeon County as a board, but we can't financially help them. That is not why the business we're in. We're in the business of educating students, not building roads. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
And one of the things I remember too was one of the problems was they wanted to change the buses not using that road coming from town, coming off the highway, so left-hand turns for our buses. And that was concerning for us. So yeah, I just wanted you all to be aware what's going down. And like I had said to Cindy, I said my concern is that they want us to write them a letter of support that might not make Sturgeon County happy because we want to work well with everybody. Stacy.
I guess just clarification. It's my understanding that when our school is on Town of Bon Accord land, it's a municipal reserve, I assume, from Town of Bon Accord. When the school was approved to be built 40 years ago, is there not a requirement that proper infrastructure is in place? And was this road not responsibility of the municipality of Bon Accord in the first place? And I'm concerned that if we write if they are asking the county, are they asking for full, ownership to go to the county, or are they asking for support and partnership? Because I think that really depends whether we support their letter or not, depending on what they're asking, because there are laws and rules in place already. But I just want to be careful that we're not putting our name saying advocating for the town of Bon Accord to push the entire project onto the county, because I don't know if that's appropriate or not. So I just would want to see how that really looks in
which was first.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Joe.
My suggestion to this is that we only put a letter forward with our concerns of how it affects the gravel road affects the school. That should be it. Nothing more than that. Thank you.
I agree with that, Joe. That is our concerns, right? Like how it gets fixed isn't our concern and where the money comes from. Our concern is our students and to have a safe place for them to access our school. Is Sturgeon County going to get the money? I can't speak for them, but the town of Bon Accord is a town. They don't belong to Sturgeon County, so I will leave that at that.
Okay. Now having the discussion is Cindy asked me, is it okay to reply? And I'm like, I don't know. So that's why because it's not just me, so. Shauna.
And just to follow up as your response and exactly as what's been stated. Your municipal partners are Sturgeon County and Town of Bon Accord in all of this. And so I do feel, and I know Ruth has been on some of these meetings, the email that was sent, you're not even sure what the ask is. And so I think that as a board, that is just to be very mindful as what is the actual ask? Because I think Trustee Briggs, even you said that it's like getting this email as per the last meeting. Because if your name is included in a letter that is sent, I think the board just has to be very mindful of to know what the actual ask is so that you know, so your name is not put to something that you are not okay with. It was the only concern just from the meetings. And I don't know, Ruth, if there's anything else since you've been in the meetings with Cindy, just in reading the email, just to protect the board and your interests of what your priorities are and where you have your voice and your backing, since you've worked very hard to repair relationships. And you've done a phenomenal job of that. And so I think it's just to think of the next steps as to what that looks like.
So maybe ask them for further clarification then to review the proposal based on the concerns. So, yeah. Okay. 10.1 Alberta School Boards Association. Oh, sorry, 9.3. See, jumped again. Committee of the Whole report. Great, my computer went down. This is just the. Sorry. I didn't print it out. It's just the.
Just for information.
Yeah.
Approve it at the next.
Yeah, so it's just it's just the minutes from the last cow. So just for your review, and we'll go through it at cow. Stacey, yeah.
Stacey Buga, Ward 5. As we have been revamping the way our committee layout works, we no longer have specific committees for our advocacy, building, maintenance, transportation, etc. And we realized that we had set our student advisory committee co-chair as default as the advocacy committee chair. We no longer have an advocacy committee or chair. So I did co-chair yesterday's meeting of the student advisory committee, but I believe that whether it's today we vote in somebody or we unofficially discuss at COW, I don't know whether it needs to be at a public board meeting that we vote in a chair, or we just kind of discuss it now that it is more of a committee setting. But just to note that we have not had that discussion this year.
Very good point. What is the consensus of the room? Joe?
I think that's something we need to deal with, that cow. I don't think we need to deal with it here.
Okay, let's put that on the cow agenda. Thank you. Now 10.1 Alberta School Boards Association Representative Janine.
So ASBA had their fall general meeting, which I guess Irene, you are the official representative for ASBA. I'm Zone 2-3, but I believe they sent out the email with all of the new position statements. So if anybody's interested in that, it's a long day of position statements, and I left early and it was still a long day, but those should be forwarded. Zone 2-3 is on Friday. I think I will be attending online. So the discussion, there's an advocacy discussion on the proposed position statement about funding full-day kindergarten. So I don't remember how that one went at ASBA, but they want to just talk about, like in Zone 2-3, just about how that looks and whatever else. And then the best practices conversation is going to be on parent engagement. So membership will be asked for their board practices on parent engagement. And I feel like this is a very perfect time to see what other boards do across the province. So I will take notes for that. Just a reminder, I feel like I sent out the agenda to everybody. Anybody can attend with the online link and you can just join for those discussion topics, which personally to me are some of the best PD is learning what other boards do in the province that I keynote here, keynote there. These discussions for me are truly valuable. So if anybody wants to join for those discussions, I've sent the agenda. I can send a quick text to the group chat when they're transitioning to these topics if you guys are interested. And that's about it. Just let me know what you want me to do.
Yeah, this is for you, Janine, because it's about the Zone 2-3. And yeah, I'm super excited to hear what they have to say about parent engagement. Unfortunately, I have to work Friday, so I'm counting on you to share with us the great ideas that I hope are out there. And do you want any input on what we should share as a board?
Sure.
Do other boards do council of school councils?
I'll find out Friday.
Because I think that's a pretty good one that we do.
Stacy?
Just as a follow-up, the full-day kindergarten position statement that came through ASBA did not pass, which is, I think, why it was presented from a Zone 2-3 board. So I think that's why we're going to be looking at it to see. There was a lot of discussion around it. So I think in the room, the intent is good, but the position statement was not. And so I think that's where the discussion is going to be had of how this position statement can fit into the new framework that was approved at ASBA's FGM. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the fall general meeting, yeah, I think it was pretty much touched on. I believe the email went out with like the brief rundown of the position statements, and yeah, that was, yeah, it was an experience. Stacy and I attended the awards night Sunday night, and that was really nice. And it was a reminder that we need to get award applications going so that we can have lots of nominees coming throughout the division. So maybe that's something we can also take a look at Cal, probably not in December, but to look at due dates. I know that the division is very good at sending it out, saying, don't forget to nominate Edwin Parr, and yeah, there's a bunch. So that was good. I already talked about the MLA breakfast. That was lovely. And the PD in the on the Tuesday. So we had 2 keynotes, and then each keynote had a breakout session. So I went to the session with the economist, who talked about resilience and adapting to change. And he was actually very, very good. So he based his talk on a book that he and another gentleman had wrote about the spider that NASA took up to the space station, and how this spider, that I can't remember the spider's name, got put into its new environment with 0 gravity, and it had to figure out how to make a web. Because they brought flies apparently to the space station for the spider to eat, but they would have to be able to catch them. So, it goes through how sometimes we don't like change and we're resistive to change, but we don't have the opportunity to just sit there and not do anything. We have to continue to move forward, or we won't get to eat flies. He didn't actually say that, but that's the concept of it. So, and then they wrote another book about, they got 3 new lessons. So the book has lessons. When it comes in from Amazon, I'll share it better. They've learned 3 new lessons through COVID. So they wrote another book. So yeah, that was good. I'm going to ask Stacy to speak about the AI.
To sum it up, it's if we do nothing, the flies eat us. I think that was the AI part of it. But basically, you can't not do anything. And the perspective of the speaker was one of unknowing what our role is as school boards. And it definitely is an issue that has to be dealt with at a provincial level. Individual school boards don't have the capacity to control things like they need to be controlled, but it is very important that we are aware and we are setting direction for our staff and our students on what AI can do, because it's got fantastic capabilities and possibilities and provides so many opportunities, but it also has extreme risk associated with it if we're not paying attention. So I had a bit of a panic, and I was frantically asking our admin, what on earth are we going to do next? And we do have a very solid place in plan. And I hope, actually, I'd ask maybe that admin share that teacher resource or staff resource with all the trustees, so that we can understand how our staff are looking at AI in our classrooms, because I was really calmed and reassured that we do have it well in hand. And as our superintendent indicated, it is a living document and it changes regularly, because the pace, when the speaker was talking about the future, she said the future of AI, in the future this will happen, in the future that will happen. She said multiple times that we're talking weeks and months, not years. When she's talking future, it's now, and it's very urgent that we keep on top of this. So it was a terrifying conversation and way to leave a conference, but I mean, I think that we're doing great things, and I would just ask that trustees be kept in the loop of how we're dealing with it. And when that, I feel like we need a statement of belief in how that goes forward at the board level. I don't know that all trustees or the board would agree that that's necessary, but just to whatever way we can assure our stakeholders that we are on top of this and we are trying to keep your students, all our students safe and, you know, participating in the future of technology while not being completely absorbed by it.
Janine?
Just the 2 seconds. I love that you were terrified and I was so excited about what AI can do for our staff and our students and the general population. So two people, same conference, completely different message walked out of there because I was not terrified at all, but like, this is amazing. And I played with it all weekend. So that's hilarious. That's just my 2-second comment.
Trish?
Well, I fall into the terrified group, and that's because with all new technology, and it gives us great advances and advantages, but there's always those bad apples who find a way to use it against us, use it against our kids, use it for their own nefarious purposes. So, yes, I think we really do have to watch how we approach this. And just for interest's sake, didn't anyone ever watch Terminator?
Cindy?
I think technology comes with a shiny and a dark side, and we just have to be aware of the implications of AI. And our students know way more than probably all of us sitting at this board table. They're way ahead of the game. So we can probably learn a lot from them. And I have confidence that our division is on top of it.
A couple last things. Couple last things. That's good grammar, isn't it? Marilyn, Dennis, and Shally